Hello everyone, welcome at our protocol sync with updates from last week and plans for the next week. And Shamil, do you want to start today?
Sure. Let me just start sharing. Last week I worked on several tasks. I finally finished all the comments and merged the PR for adding persistent networking parameters. It basically creates some persistence layer for the addresses that a node gathers through its life. So it accumulates all the known addresses and peers IP IDs of its neighbors into some database. The database backend for this is PyroTTB. This is the first part of that feature. The second part is what I'm working right now. This is a little bit changing of algorithm. We need to use known peers before the bootstrap peer. So we could also add to this set of known peers some nodes and addresses manually using the CLI command line. But so we will use its accumulated addresses before that manually provided not addresses. Also, last week I fixed a small bug for just this technical bug for the trade networking parameters registry that prevented Subspace desktop versions of Farmer to build. It's just a small bug. This was fixed with one line. Also, I finished implementing and I fixed all the comments from Nazar for adding pieces verification to farmers on the DSN sync. Now we can download all the necessary information from neighbor farmers, and we added that this data is verified against the blockchain. My plan for this week is to finish this second part of the persistence, networking parameter persistence, and to probably start investigating networking errors on farmer with large plot size. A community member reported a bug with 47 terabytes plot, and we need to investigate it. So that's it.
Yeah, I was thinking about that on the large plot size, and there is a chance that we might have to only expose part of the subset of farmers to the network and not all of them, because for 47 terabytes that will be 470 is it? Yeah.
Yes.
Peers, which might be a little bit overwhelming for
the P2P.
Yeah, I mean it's fine for the peer-to-peer. It just will consume too many resources.
Actually, P2P has some issues with Yamux layer. And there are some reported bugs, and they are unhappy with it. So this is why they wait for quick protocol. So my current just feeling that it is indeed connected with a large number of peers within a single process, and probably with P2P. I hope that we won't need to create some overlay protocol that combines those peers into some single protocol.
No, what I meant is that we will take, let's say, the first 100 peers and we'll just cap at that. And for actual responses, we will potentially query other plots as well, and we might do something more complex, like take 100, but more or less uniformly distributed in the namespace. And then when requests come in, we will try to query neighboring plots potentially to answer to some query ranges.
We could try doing that, but since that networking instances number will be still large, we could end up in the same problem because we
Yeah.
will still have its half a thousand of networking peers.
Yeah, I don't think just peers on their own are a problem. It's probably like I'm just afraid it will consume something like 10 cores of CPU, and that would be unfortunate.
Okay, I will test that number. I will probably need a consult from you or Ivan how to disable plotting.
Yeah, and on the Yamuk side, there are just some like I wanted to say prioritization, but there's basically some features missing in terms of like distributing requests into different channels or something like that that they don't particularly like. So Mplex was like terrible, and they want to replace it in JavaScript finally with Yamuk, so they have the same on all sides. But even that is like not ideal. So they are looking into different things, and Quick just happens to contain multiplexer alongside other things.
Yep. I also thought that to verify that it's Yamok's problem, we could briefly change it to Mplex just to
I don't think it
verify
will be any
that.
better, honestly.
But if that particular error will disappear, this is a problem then. Quick, it's easy way to reproduce and to verify that Yamox is a problem.
I think it if that's an error, it might be an error on the relay. That's the first thing to check.
Yes, also an option.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else? All right, Daria, do you want to share something?
Well, I still the same thing. I'm working on the spec, but now it's mostly the to-do items from the various research documents you have scattered in Notion. So I'm mostly familiarizing myself with those to keep the up to date and to try to translate it into a more technical and formal sort of to-do language. So I guess that's what I've been doing, what I'm going to be doing at least for the next couple of days, and then we'll meet to discuss more and yeah, see what else I would be doing.
Okay, makes sense to me. Okay, Alexei, back to you again on the workers.
Yes, so I'll be working enabling self-hosted workers because they looks to be more efficient in terms of time, but it will take me some more effort, so I'll have to rewrite current CI to enable them explicitly so that certain steps will use our own hosted workers instead of GitHub ones.
Yeah, and my question on the previous call was about software installed on those workers. So I noticed that
Yes.
some of the software wasn't available, and that's why our action has failed. Is there a way to add the same software as GitHub Actions? Like if there are like a script or like list of things you need to install to make it exactly the same?
Yes, it should be possible, but some architectures have limitations. For example, Mac having some problems reinstalling self-hosted worker. So I guess it should be possible, but I have to dig through some bugs first.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that for Linux we can create a container and we can run everything in a container. It wouldn't matter what the operating system looks like. I
Oh,
believe there are containers on Windows, but I'm not sure what we can do about Mac to make sure that the software we need is available.
yes, because currently what we have, it's Mac M1 architecture, and it should have Docker support, but there it's actually limited and needs to be tested. So I guess
Well,
if we switch,
Docker will not help us on Mac. We need to build Mac binaries.
I see. If we, yeah, actually, if we would have a layer for Docker, that could simplify things and basically takes out most of load of GitHub runners to our own. But let's see we have to try it as well.
Okay. Any questions from the team about workers?
I'm just curious, how is the hardware spec on this self-hosted Windows?
It's 3600 for Windows and Linux, and M1 for macOS. I believe it's 32 or 64 gigs of RAM. I believe 64.
32.
So it should be 32.
I guess, yes, 32.
Okay.
32, yeah.
Should still be plenty for what we are doing, and we can bump it up if necessary. Okay. Thank you. Ved, do you have anything to share today?
Yeah. Okay, give me a second. Sorry. Was working on the Lightline to-dos that I've left in the previous weeks, mostly finalizing the headers at a K depth, and then extracting some more digits. These are coming from the update that Nazar made a few weeks back to make the fast sync work, and I'm reusing most of those work itself here. And there is this one last one that we haven't done yet, that is archival storage verification for the solution that is still out there. Hopefully we can get this landed in the next day or two. Post that, coming back to the small dot or Substrate Connect, I was initiating some discussions with the devs from Substrate Connect. The main thing was that we would need to fork irrespective because of the way how Substrate Connect is set up right now. Everything is done through config, and the config has very hard-coded consensus parameters. And if we want to not have any forks on that end, then ideally they should be able to add our consensus into small dot, which is a client behind Substrate Connect. I highly doubt it, considering how they are approaching this particular client, unlike the Substrate one, which is not so modular. The small dot one is. What they suggested was to fork small dot and also smoke Substrate Connect completely, and then include our own consensus in there. It would be not so ideal, but we would still need to fork Substrate Connect irrespective, because the extension still works on a config parameters given by the user at that point. So if so the config will look at specific consensus parameters and then only work based on those. So since small dot doesn't understand what subspace consensus is, so we would need to ensure that that works. So we would have to fork Substrate Connect at least for a bit of time, unless some config changes, so that we could plug in our own consensus some way or the other. Coming on to the small dot, which is the client behind Substrate Connect, we don't have to fork it. I think we can reuse most of the networking and sync, block sync that they have done. The only thing that we can ignore from that part is basically their own consensus. And maybe we could use our consensus along with their networking and storage layer and see if that works. Uh, that that is something that I'm looking at, and that looks to be much more doable than suggesting them to change how the uh, behavior on small dot is when it comes to consensus. That has been the progress so far.
Okay. Kind of makes sense given the description they have in that repository, that it's not supposed to be modular and not supposed to be extensible. So if we can at least
Yeah.
reuse some parts, that would be already pretty good.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity,
Yeah.
is small dot
Go ahead, Shane.
sure, is small dot production ready? Because last time I checked, it wasn't.
It like it is not, depends on how you look at it. They are already using it as a light line, So, but when I looked at the code, not so much because there's just too many to-dos to handle and too many issues to fix. But on the client side, on the user-facing side, it seems to be underneath at least. So they are able to sync the headers with parachains with the relay chain. So I'm not seeing a lot of issues on the Substrate Connect side of it. So yeah, it's a yes and no, I would say.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the other comment is even if we can't merge into Substrate Connect and we have to fork it, it would still be ideal to maintain as many of like the concepts or like the API or the interfaces of it as possible, because everyone in the Substrate ecosystem is building integrations on top of Substrate Connect, like Subwallet and Talisman both allow Substrate Connect to work within them, so you don't have to connect to a trusted provider as a client, and it would be great if that would be like a drop-in replacement if we had our version of it, or as minimal changes as possible. But like reinventing the API to be like completely customized to Subspace from first principles will actually make it much harder for people to integrate with us, like third-party software providers. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, absolutely, Jamie. Like the whole reason why we have to fork Substrate Connect is just because how the config works for them. If it was something where user could provide in a pluggable consensus, we do not even need to talk about Substrate Connect altogether. We could just deal with the small dot client and then figure it out. But the way the config is set up right now, or the way the extension is supposed to be initialized or loaded up, it is impossible for us to plug in our own consensus there for everyone. At this point, the ideal situation would be just take out that piece and then just add our own config there. That would be a very straightforward change without any API changes.
Great. Yeah, that's what I understood. I just wanted to be clear on the
Yeah.
trying to keep that the same.
Okay. Anything else there?
I wanted to ask, whatever happened to, I recall a couple of weeks back, there was like an issue that for Light Client, there were too many things to verify that were in the runtime and not stateless. Whatever happened to that? If I
Can you repeat?
Yeah, I guess I'll go through GitHub to understand it better.
I think Daria's question is there were consensus checks that we were skipping in the Light client, so it wasn't the same security guarantees as a full node. And what are we doing about that right now? Or what's the
right now it's much less secure, and that's something we'll be discussing with Vlad today, later today, because it almost seems like we will have to basically replicate the whole consensus in the client, so that we can check when solution range needs to be updated and what the updated value should be, instead of just trusting that in this header it was like updated, or at which cadence should the salt be updated, like when it should be revealed and stuff like that. All of those things are right now in the runtime, and they'll probably stay there. It would be kind of unfortunate if we have to replicate them in the client separately, but on the other hand, that's probably what we'll have to do anyway. And we'll probably build some kind of utility functions or data structures that both the fast sync and the Light client can reuse.
Yeah, we started out with deriving those on the Light client itself, but then for the sake of it, we moved to using the headers for now with how fasting is doing. Apart from that, the other one would be we are still doing solution verification that hasn't landed in the master main branch yet, but there's a PR out there that deals with that.
Yeah, so basically, if you have, let's say, a quorum of nodes that tell you that this is the tip of the chain and they all agree, and you are not under Eclipse, then you can import all of the blocks up until that point and verify them to a certain point. But it's far from the same security guarantees, unfortunately, at least right now.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I think that's all on the Light client side for now. Chain. What are your updates?
Okay, just one quick update on the blog import directly in PR. So as discussed on Slack, a channel is used in the Subspace like blog import when this like channel is full. This import will just always. And regarding the error handling of the bundles processor, the current idea is like we just fail the executor worker is an essential task, so the whole service will just be took down, just like the authoring task. And it's not an absolute clean shutdown, but will be much better when this like receipts processing in the processor like removed in the future. So currently the bundles processor mainly consists two parts. One is to build and import the block. The other part is to process the receipts. So once that part is removed from the bundles processor, the whole function bundles processor will be much clean if we just take down the service like the authoring task. Yeah, more details we'll just wait for the review.
Okay, makes sense to me on that side. I'm not sure how clear it is for others though. Maybe not so much.
Okay, we already left this discussion on Slack if you are interested.
Oh, all right. Any questions about that? Okay, let me share my updates then. Interesting. Okay. So on the monorepo side, there was only this pull request, which is meaningful. Basically, there was this problem. There wasn't an issue for this. There was a problem with the ordering. Basically, when we are building the Subspace runtime, for instance, and we are building WASM blob, or even like a native one, we need to include the runtime as WASM of the executor Cirrus runtime. And in some cases, for some reason, specifically on the desktop side when it's built in CI, it looks like this hasn't finished yet by the time the build script was running for the Subspace runtime. It was building locally, it was building in monorepo all the time, but it wasn't in the desktop side. So we had to fix it, and there was a forum post that I created on the Rust forum, and one guy suggested that what we can do, we can first add this links thing in the cargo toml. This basically says, from what I understand, that this crate is providing this library. That is one crucial part. And the other one, we are calling just a function here. We can print this cargo and then column and then some key value, and that key value will be available for the upper dependency. So like if something depends on this, it will get access to this. And that is, for instance, used in the OpenSSL. So when you are depending on OpenSSL package, it will set an environment variable so you can know which version of OpenSSL was included. That's one of the examples. And then on the runtime side, again, this thing was updated. What we can basically do, we can, let me see. In the runtime, yeah, it's here. So instead of trying to figure out the path to that runtime of dependency, we can do much simpler. we can just take dep underscore, then name of the package where we replace dash with underscore, and then that key. And basically, we can extract that value, which in our case is the path to that WASM blob. And we don't need to guess like whether someone is using target directory and it's custom, or that's the default, whether we are building it by default or we're specifying a target architecture, which creates a subfolder. Like none of that matters anymore. We can just rely on this variable to be always correct. And that simplified a lot of things, and it actually works in desktop now. So that was interesting. I didn't know it exists. And if you have a similar problem where you need to have access to something from the dependency and you don't necessarily know what the dependency is, and out there for every dependency is unique, that's basically the way to go. Any questions about this? Okay. And another one that was important in Substrate, this is the latest pull request I opened. Basically, there was this big networking crate that I'm tearing apart for a while now. And it had this huge data structure called network service, which had a whole bunch of methods. And those seems like not that much. There are some others below. So there are just a bunch of methods here that are just not ending. And everything in Substrate was depending on that data structure to have access to announcing blocks, broadcasting transactions, making requests, changing set of peers, everything. So what I did is I've created a bunch of traits. So for instance, network signer allows you to sign with the identity of the networking, or for the key value of Kademlia, you can have this trait. And then whenever we need something, let's say we are going into the consensus POV. No, that's not the good example. For instance, here we have this crate that depends on the dependent on network service. Now we can just depend on two particular traits of the functionality that it is using. It doesn't use the whole API surface of the network service. So what this allows us to do, it allows us to have completely custom interface, completely custom networking implementation potentially, or at least a wrapper. And as long as that wrapper satisfies network block, which in our case is a trait that needs to be able to announce a block and needs to be able to tell that new best block was, let me find this. Well, yeah, new best block was imported. As long as we can provide these two methods, we are good. We basically don't need the whole network service. So this is one of the last steps towards pluggable networking, as I call it now. There will be one more smaller pull request, which will basically remove a C network dependency from most of the crates here. And at that point, we can try to experiment with things. We can try to, let's say, announce blocks over gossip sub, or we can change the format in which blocks are transmitted. We can do things like compact proofs and all kinds of things. But we need to get this merged, and it is quite huge. So we'll see how much time it will take to get this upstreamed. And I think on the code side, that's all for me this week.
Awesome. That's amazing, Nazar. That's a huge amount of effort. So just to make sure I understand, if or when this PR gets merged, then this will unlock a lot of new features for us, or at least the ability for us to start working on a lot of new features.
Yeah, potentially we can throw away networking of Substrate and use our Subspace networking. I think there is a long way to that, but at least we can experiment with things. We can like optionally replace it, or we can like customize some of the things. The only like concern I have right now is that this API here is basically what it was in Substrate. So it's not necessarily super generic, but it is the first step. Especially things like on the peers side, there are many peers methods that are really specific. But we can work with that. We can make changes later and improve this as time goes on.
Awesome. We'll have to let Parity know that they'll have to change the bullet points of Substrate to now say pluggable consensus and pluggable networking. Thanks to Nizar.
Yeah. All right. Oh, Ivan, hello.
Hi, yeah. So sorry for being late.
No worries. Yeah, let's go with you then.
Yeah, sure. Not much from my side. Just let me share the screen. Yeah, during the last week, there was 2 minor issues related to the DSN side. So basically, if we started the DSN sync on an empty chain, it basically the farmer basically panicked. So yeah, that was due to there was 2 pull requests. Yeah, I believe at one time there was an issue that the total pieces was 0, and we just substituted that with like 1 segment with a special case when the chain is empty. So yeah, and another one was that we hit an overflow. Yeah, if we divide our maximum by the 1, and after that multiply by 1000, we will hit the overflow. So yeah, that was 2 minor issues. Yeah, they were heavily merged. Yeah, and the last week I was struggling with the farmer graceful shutdown pull request. So there were 2 takes on that, and there's the last one. So yeah, not much to show here, I guess. It works as follows. It just basically ensures during the drop that every process and task and thread is exited. Yeah, so here, for example, like at the moment of the commitments creating, we just have the yeah, when we want to create commitments for some plot and for some salt, we just also provide the predicate, not the predicate, but the closure, which we can poll. Yeah, and if it returned true, we can just stop there. So basically, yeah. So basically, for the commitments here, it is very basically blocking and very synchronous. So yeah, that's how I decided to go with that. And as for the other things like farming, we just ensure during the drop that the basically the farming handle, the farming task is basically finished. Yeah, and just block on that. But of course is not like bug free, because if we don't have the multi-thread runtime, we just have we can have basically the deadlock. Yeah, but yeah, at least if we have the multi-threaded runtime, it works. Yeah, and the same goes for the other stuff there. It basically just works. Yeah, it just basically works like that. Yeah, and there was another task, basically adding the object mapping roots into the root block. Not much to show here, I guess, but we just have the yeah. Let me just find the not this one, I believe. Yeah, basically right now we have the root block v0, which is basically our header, and there will be there is on another field right now, which is the object mapping root, which is basically calculated as the hash of the hash and the offset of each of the object. Yeah, and we just added that, and we also validate that during the block import. Yeah, let me. Yeah, we also record every one of those into the storage. Yeah, and just check that during the segment validation, I believe, or the or during the check of the root blocks themselves. Yeah. So also during this week, I was working on the testing the DSN right now. So so yeah, I just basically put this sync from the Gemini 1 into the background. Yeah, and it still didn't finish for me. Yeah, maybe the issue is that I'm running it on the HDD, but yeah, I think like 300 or 400 blocks. So yeah, still waiting on that, but I guess I can start the testing itself.
So is it just a node?
Yeah, the node itself is. I mean, I think it's not the node which is a bottleneck. It's rather the parameter right now because it is evicting pieces. Yeah, and it's and it applies around like 2 or like 10 blocks per second, something like that. At least for me.
Well, that might be how fast it can actually download them, if that's the early history.
Oh, it's not the early history actually.
Okay.
It's 300 or even more blocks. Yeah, the height on which I'm thinking right now.
Okay.
So yeah, but still, yeah, it's just that. Yeah, I'm waiting for Vicinity, I guess. In order to get on the tip of the chain, yeah. But for sure, like I already filled all the plots. So yeah. I think I can already start the syncing itself. Yeah. So during this week, I plan to test that. Yeah, and take some other tasks from the board. Yeah. And no idea right now which I would take. Yeah. And basically finalize those 2 pairs. Yeah. So that's it for my side.
Yeah, I'll need to look carefully at that object mappings PR. I'm fairly certain it will already break the fast sync. But I'm not sure about the rest.
I have a
Yeah.
question about graceful shutdown. Am I correct that the previous version could corrupt local data, I mean plots or object mappings?
Yeah, we basically aborted some of the thread handles and task handles. Yeah, I believe.
So
You
now
cannot
it's,
abort the thread.
Abort
It needs
task,
to
I
run.
believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so
Sorry.
now we are safe from that threads. You can't have some unlucky run of Control C or Command C.
Yeah, I believe everything will be dropped. Yeah. So basically, the drop rate will run on each object. Yeah. So and we will exit carefully. Yeah. And
So
also
no-
we will wait for each of those to exit.
So no unsafe intermediate state.
I believe so. Yeah. I better not miss something.
What do you mean by intermediate state?
Is there any moment in the run of the applications, and if we abort it, then we will have an incorrect state on the disk? So do we have some unlucky Command C or Control C?
That's a very good question. I haven't seen the latest version of pull request yet, but the idea is that that shouldn't be the case. The bigger problem was that there are destructors of C++ and Rust, and we have a Rust application. So sometimes it so happened that we have a Rust application that is stopping, and there are some threads that are still holding the instance of RocksDB, which is C++, and we are basically killing the application in the middle of something there happening. And I believe in some cases that was causing an application to arrive at the inconsistent state. Not necessarily, but I suspect so.
And now, let's say we are more safe in that matter.
That's the goal. Yeah.
Hey, Shamil, I'm curious, are you reviewing Yvonne's code, the PRs that Nazar's reviewing as well?
Sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah, sometimes it touches the networking also. Yeah.
Okay. I think it would be great just as a best practice for everybody on the protocol team to be reviewing everybody's code versus just Nazar. And then those kind of concerns that you have there, Shamil, you can look for those sort of things and just help get a second set of eyes on it to try to identify these issues and point them out if you see them.
Actually,
I think that's a great point.
My question arose from that PR that I reviewed. There are 2 PRs. One was canceled, and I reviewed that was canceled. So I'm not sure about the first one, and that's why I asked.
Yeah, it was just built on top of the first take of that PR. yeah, about the graceful shutdown. Yeah.
Yes, and in the that was cancelled, there was a case when we actually could exit the application before some process to finish. This is why I asked the question.
Let me check. I may share the screen. Yeah. We can check the
I think
comment.
we could do that outside of this.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, the idea is certainly that we will make sure that all of the processes which need to finish for state to be consistent are finished, and all of the like handlers that needs to be closed are closed, and only then we exit. So like everything is already shut down when we exit. There is nothing, no races, nothing. Yeah.
I just checked VPR, but basically beforehand I introduced the like stop function for the networking. Yeah, and I just basically removed it in the new take on the graceful shutdown. So right now we just ensure that the last node which is dropped, yeah, it also drops the last sender for the commands for the networking. So the node runner will receive that and also stop. So that's how it goes right now.
Yeah, that's something I was afraid of. It will, but you don't know when. So it might so happen that you've just stopped the farmer and then you start a new farmer, but that networking in the background is still stopping, so the ports are busy, and you are using some random ports instead, and then so on. So that's why I was saying that it's really tricky. I'll need to look carefully into that. So basically, the idea is that as long as we like dropped and application moved to the next line in the code, everything should be dead. All of the database is closed, all of the TCP UDP sockets closed, nothing is in memory.
Oh, actually, we ensure during the drop of the single plot farmer that we exited from the node runner. So yeah, the run function of that should return. Yeah.
Okay, maybe I'll need to check.
Yeah, it will be better, right?
Okay, I think that's about all we have today.
I had another question. Like the object mapping stuff is about the case when we know exactly what kind of useful data we're having in the segment, like we're archiving like Kusama blocks. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So we are verifying with the upcoming with one of the pull requests that Shamil created. We are verifying the pieces that they are actually part of the history, but we also have object mappings on the farmer. And we need to also note that those object mappings are actually part of the history as well. Okay, anything else? All right, thanks everyone for sharing updates. Very good progress. And thanks everyone for watching. And we'll see you next week.